It's our first ever traveling podcast. We are not at the church. It's an exciting time.
It is. Yep. Yes. We all don't know where to look. Do we look at the camera? Do we look at each other?
We don't know where to go.
It's okay to look at each other.
Yeah, that's usually what we do.
Okay.
Yep.
We are at the Marriott West Chase, where part of annual conference is happening.
That's right.
It's here, and it's at First United Methodist Church Houston West Chase campus.
Mm-hmm.
So, but right now we're in the hotel because it's where we could find a quiet place
That's right.
to do this.
Yes.
And today we're really excited because we have not one, but two guest co-hosts. Yay! So we've got Ben Middleton and Marilee Thomas who are with us today. They are our annual conference delegates. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
You can rock, paper, scissors.
Go!
So my name is Ben Middleton, and I've been going to Katy First now for a little bit over 7 years.
Yeah, that's right.
We moved down here from Wisconsin, and so super excited to be here.
Mm-hmm. They'll hear the Wisconsin in your voice.
And I'm Marilee Thomas. I've been at Katy First for 21 years. This is my first year as a delegate for Katy First.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. So
That's
we're going to do a little bit different than we usually do. We'll do our recap, right? And we'll also talk about annual conference. So there's going to be a lot.
We got a lot going on.
But it's going to be good.
It's going to be great.
Well, I'm Becca. I'm the pastor of Family Ministries here at Katy First.
And I'm Mark. I'm the senior pastor here at Katy First.
Welcome to the Katy First Family Podcast, where we offer ideas, inspiration, and encouragement to help your family grow as joyful disciples of Jesus Christ. We have a lot to talk about today. So start with worship.
Yeah, we'll start with worship.
Okay.
And we were all in worship.
We were.
We were.
Yeah.
Together even.
I was thinking, because I talked to Ben about this, and Marilee just has been thrown into the fire here that you're going to do a podcast with us today. But I was like, oh, let's see if we're all in worship so we can all talk about it. And we all were in worship, which is great. We finished our Sabbath series, and we talked about it as resistance, and talked about what that resistance looks like, and what are we resisting? What kind of world are we resisting? What were those Israelites resisting? And really like how that sort of grew from just like this thing that they experienced in the wilderness of collecting manna and when to collect it, and how it grew to all aspects of their life and even bigger ways in which God was sort of saying, you're not going to go back to Egypt, not just now here in the wilderness, but in this new land, as you create a new society. The Sabbath is the safeguard that we don't reduplicate the oppression, the worth and value being tied to our production and our purchasing power. So it was really powerful. And then we just said, well, what's that look like for us?
You forgot an important part of your sermon.
Yeah. Which part?
The part where you made Barry a bread bully.
Yeah.
And apparently
he was the king of bread.
He was the king of bread. I actually think that we should retitle it. You know how Friends does like the episode names where it's like the one where?
Yes.
I wrote here on my notes, my fancy worship notes, the one where Barry becomes a bread king and Becca does not.
Yeah. Yeah. And since then there's been a bit of a discussion because I used Barry as the bread king because he could use the choir to go gather bread and create this unequal distribution of bread. And if Becca by herself couldn't, but the truth is you got a whole youth group and y'all are a rough crew of people. I really feel like
you are not counting on the power of mobilizing the youth and also the children. Like Marilee knows we can get those little kids out there and they're up early. Yeah. Little kids are up early. I would put them to work.
And they love snacks.
And they love
snacks.
See, I don't know. I think we're going to give the choir a run for their money.
Okay, well, here's the deal. We're not reduplicating Egypt, so none of us are going to do this anyway.
Oh, right. Got it.
So anyway, so we just finished with like this sense of resisting this world. And, you know, as people who live in the Katy suburb that... and some of y'all can talk about this, particularly Ben. You got teenagers right now, like the pressure on teenagers to succeed, and get ready for this, and that. But all of us, we live in like a bubble of excess, a bubble of a lot of drive, which in some of that, of course, is good, but a lot of it, if it gets overblown, becomes this thing that just drains us. We lose who we are, we lose our humanity, and so Sabbath needs to be a safeguard for us too, as people who live in Katy, Texas, and what it looks like for us to live that out. So, and kind of finished with like this idea of like this posture of Sabbath is really this open-handedness of grace. That's what resistance looks like. This open-handedness of the cross, this open-handedness of Jesus that helps us trust in God. So that's the big recap. But we were kind of trying to figure out, well, what's that look like for us? And that'd be neat for us to kind of talk about what it looks like. Yeah. Both of y'all are parents, different stages, and how that works or completely doesn't work, to try to work that into your life and family or with the church.
As a parent of a junior higher now going into high school and a high schooler that's going into college, it's interesting because not only are there pressures to succeed, but there's also pressures to keep up with your classmates in just about every aspect of it. Yep. So you think about it, whether it comes to what car I drive when you're in high school, what clothes I wear, and what things I'm a part of or what I'm doing, what school I'm going to go to when you're thinking about college. And there is so much pressure to strive to be number one. And when I think of just all of Western society, globally, you think of there really is this drive to be number one.
Yeah.
And, and people get into it, whether it's I'm going to make sure that I have the best looking roses in the neighborhood, I'm going to have the best lawn in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's the home maintenance. We're always in this competitive nature. And what I loved about the sermon was talking about the fact that you could only collect enough for today. There was no storing up all of your stuff for winter or for a rainy day. There was no rainy day fund that the Israelites, which is completely contrary to the thinking that we all are brought up with.
Yeah.
We're all, and we're talking about our retirement. What are you going to do for your 401k? What are you squirreling away? And, how are you going to make sure that you're prepared for the future?
Yeah.
And then it becomes a score system. Am I doing better? And it seems like almost every financial institution does the same thing too, right? Here's the average person your age, and are you ahead or you're behind? And it's always how do I maximize those benefits?
Yep.
I would imagine that so that totally makes sense, especially in your home life with the age kids that you have, with like teenagers dealing with that, and then like you were saying, wider. What does that look like with littles? Because your kids are in elementary and then like a baby, like a 1-year-old.
I think it's about simplification, because we live in a world of abundance. I need something, I click on Amazon and it's at my doorstep. You can have anything you want. However, we also are living in a world of inflation, and people's wages are not meeting the needs of the economy right now. And so a lot of parents that I know of littles, we're kind of starting out in the world still, and trying to keep up with the standards that have been set before us, and doing that with less resource. And so a lot of parents I know have been struggling with that. And so the story of the manna and the fact that they had to trust that God would bring them more the next day, and that God would take care of them, and that things would work out in the end. And it's hard when you have littles because you're trying to protect them, and but that faith is so important.
I think that the part, and you both talked about this, the idea of serving enough or trusting in enough versus serving never enough. I think it's even just the fear of their never being enough.
Yeah. That
I think for families in particular, but really everybody, is such a driving force. Can we trust that God is good enough to provide enough to catch us? And we talked a little bit last week even about this communal nature of has to be woven into how we Sabbath, because if we're going to say we serve enough only, then we have to trust that God will catch us, and part of that catching is having one another, so that if, I don't have enough, that you guys are going to, you will let God work through you to catch me, if that makes sense. Or if you can't go out and gather your manna, somebody could go get it for you, because if your leg's broken, you need somebody to help you out.
And it's not just about financial and material things. It's about energy and time, 100%, and patience and that kind of thing. So it goes back to having a village. It's really hard to raise a kid if you don't have a village.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a place of the church where we need to come in and be a village for everybody. And to support each other, because that's what God calls us to do.
Yeah. And Ben, I know I've heard you talk about how I just remember we had like a leadership meeting, and I think I'm like 99.9% sure it was you who talked about how you feel like it's something that's on the heart of our church to want to be that village for not just for each other, but for our whole Katy community. I mean, as somebody who moved here, I think you had that like insight.
I think the challenge goes to it, going back again to the culture that we live in, is where does my value come from? Kind of flipping a little bit to just the fact that we're here at annual conference. One of the things, the words that they brought up today was the intrinsic value that I have. So what is my intrinsic value that I actually exude? So I think so often, we know that God values everybody, and no matter, it's not what you do, but everybody has value regardless of what they do. But it's so hard in our society for somebody to just show up and feel that value unless they're contributing. And then of course everybody's looking for the praise that they're going to get back too, because that helps to build that value that they're going to get. So how do we really truly allow everybody to feel you are valuable just the way you are? And it's not, when you're tired, it's okay, take a rest. Because the community's got you. It doesn't mean when there's a call from the church, hey, we need volunteers to do this. Okay, I'm going to try to figure out how I'm going to get up and go do this, because that's where I get my value from, or my worth.
Right.
Well, and that ties back perfectly to how the whole, I feel like the heart of like the scripture from Sunday was like, we're not going to be Egyptians again. We're not going to go back to believing that people's only value is what they make or create or what they can produce, that people have value. And that Sabbath reminds us of that. It pushes back on that idea so hard, right? We're not going to be Egyptians again. I actually heard, I was going to talk to you about this before. So if I butcher this.
I like on spot.
I know. If I butcher this, then we're going to edit it out. But I heard one time, I think it was a seminary professor, talk about how part of the reason we translate the Lord's Prayer the way we do,
the daily bread part?
No. The trespass against others. Forgive
trespasses or debts or
But the reason we use the word trespass is like it's a way to like talk about like forgive us when we act like Egyptians, like when we go backwards back into that mentality, or when people treat us like Egyptians, like the Egyptians treated one another. Like it's that idea of like, I kind of butchered it, but it was this idea of like going into a land that you shouldn't be, which is maybe better, like going into like a mentality that you shouldn't, that's not what God wants for us. It's not holy. It's not faithful. That we don't need to serve. We shouldn't serve. It's not good for us. It's not how we're built to serve never enough.
Well, it's so funny though, because even if you follow the story of the Israelites, after they get into the promised land, they went ahead and said, hey, we need a king. Hey, we want to be just like the Israelites again. And how did that work out for them?
They end up doing it.
Yeah. It's kind of like the repeating story.
Yeah.
It's like, let's be like, oh, no, like this is so special. Let's do this. Oh, no, let's be like everybody else. Oh, no, that was a mistake. Let's try again. And I just love that you see that grace like constantly like, that's right, guys, come on back. Let's regroup. Let's try again. I think that's good. But it is the story of us.
I mean, I sat in on the youth Sunday school. Ben was teaching.
Yes. He's
and did a great job. We
great.
talked about not Hey Guy. That was last week. We did the Beatles this week. Obadiah.
Like, Don't laugh, Marilee. It encourages them. It encourages them.
and Ben did a great job, like walking them through it. But then he did this great thing that I don't know if when you sort of did the big narrative of this sort of and you use the language of creation, fall, and
covenant.
Mm-hmm. And we've used the language often as order, reorder, disorder. Sometimes it's phrased another way, but it's the same pattern of like there's the order, then there's the messiness, the disorder, there's the fall, there's the wilderness, then there's reorder, there's Israel, new land, and sometimes that disorder is because we've messed it up. Sometimes it's just God wants to till the ground on us. But that story just keeps repeating and repeating and repeating, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's easier to fall into that because that's what the rest of the world is doing. You get in the pace, you go to work, you do all of those things, and so you get sucked into that world, and so it's hard to come out of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And you need other people to help you.
Yeah.
It's the village.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say I've been sort of like pleasantly surprised. I've heard it said that like, if you pick any topic in the scripture and you sort of like start with this, what feels like singular topic, and then you start pulling the string on it, like everything else comes with it. And Sabbath has felt like this topic that, I think for a lot of us feels like just that one day a week where we're supposed to pause. And then you pull the string on it and it's like, no, this is an internal journey. This is a community thing. This is a value, like it just everything, and I think you do it with a number of topics, but Sabbath feels like one that that's definitely been true. And I've actually been surprised about it, even though we anticipated talking about Sabbath. It's been kind of neat to see how big of a concept it could really play out in our lives.
Yeah.
In so many big ways, small ways.
I think Sabbath is something that everyone seeks. Like they have the desire for Sabbath.
Right.
It's just working into your schedule and making it happen.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. I think it's interesting. This is the part where I try to make a segue. I think it's interesting too, though, because the annual conference has like a 4-year, like they do quadrennium, fancy word, of themes. And so last year was Revive, which made sense because our conference had been through a lot. And so we were trying to like kind of bring it back. And this year has been Renew. And I even ran into a lady on the elevator coming up here. And she was like, oh, just enough time to go get a nap because the bishop said we have to do self-care. And I was like, yeah, that's great. But I think that, Renew does go with the idea of Sabbath. And this idea of like our conference setting better rhythms for clergy, for laity, for local churches, for the conference as a whole. That's my attempt at a segue. Ta-da!
Yeah. Ta-da! And we're at annual conference.
Yes, let's talk about annual conference.
Okay, you're going to give the quickest,
oh my gosh,
funniest, because you put that on yourself.
I did.
Funny.
I said I could do it.
Re-explanation of what an annual conference is for all those that are like, what's an annual conference and why should I care?
Okay, nobody look at me. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. Okay, here's how it goes. So if you watch the General Conference podcast, then you heard a little bit of an explanation of how we are structured as United Methodists, which will explain why we are having an annual conference. So as fast as I can do it, which is pretty fast.
Yeah, I already feel like you're talking at 2 times speed, but it's great.
That's
Keep
what
going.
I was going to do in person. Yeah. Okay. Intentional, Mark. So as fast as I can do it, I'm going to explain to you how we have annual conferences. The United Methodist Church is formed around local churches. All of those local churches in a geographic area are part of a district. In our conference, there are 5 districts that make up our annual conference. Even though we're called the Texas Annual Conference, we are not the entirety of the state of Texas. We go from Texarkana all the way down to Matagorda and out west as far as Tyler, College Station, Bryan, and then all the way over to Louisiana. So it's sort of like a slice on the side. So you have your annual conference, which is made up of districts, and we meet as Clay. clergy and laity
Yeah.
once a year to make decisions for the annual conference. Wider than that, you have the general conference, which is all of the annual conferences and their elected delegates that meet. We just had general conference not that long ago. They determine the polity and procedures for our international denomination. And we also have jurisdictional conferences, which I'm not going to try to explain here because it will take too long.
Yeah. Great job.
Thank you.
It was also so funny.
Because polity is hilarious.
Yeah.
Listen, I did the best I could.
That was great. That was really good. Very well done.
I could
Very
have
well
done
done.
some like tap dance. Maybe
Yeah.
that would have been more
No,
funny.
that was great. So we've been at our annual conference this year. Ben, this is your second annual conference.
It
you
is.
served as our delegate last year. Marilee, you've been to annual conferences, but your first is
I was a
Katy
delegate for Katy.
for
yes.
Katy first.
I've been a delegate at a previous.
Yeah. And so because there's 2 clergy, we have 2 laity from our church. We need to give Barry a shout out too. He's also
Yes.
a delegate for our district. He's helping plan worship.
Yeah, he's on the worship planning team.
So go Barry. We love you. And we have a number of our retired clergy who are also here with us. But so we just thought we'd kind of talk about what y'all have been hearing. What's been some of the highlights that so far we're halfway through annual conference. What you're hearing. What seems kind of neat.
Well, I've kind of experienced, or what I've kind of picked up on is everyone has the sense of rebuilding. We've been through some turmoil. We've been through disaffiliation, and there's been so much drama going on. And I feel like, I wasn't here last year, but I feel like last year was kind of like we've all got open wounds. We're all, struggling to try and put this back together. We don't know, But I think this year everyone's confident enough that we have like a base ground. We know what we're doing. We're back into our routines and our groove, and everyone's now excited about being creative and finding where we're being called to serve.
Yeah.
The way I think about it in teaching, I am a teacher as well, so the way I say it in teaching is your first year survival. The first year of doing anything, you are just trying to get through. The second year, you know what you're doing, you're getting your routines, you're getting your system, you build your confidence, and the third year you get creative. And that's when you start doing your real teaching, your real serving, your real ministry, because you know you're safe, and so now you can extend and reach out.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
That's really cool. So for me, the big thing that I've been taking away as we look at it, in fact, we've had several speakers reference this, and I don't think it was planned. I think that it just happened by chance.
Came up.
And
Organically.
so it did. But people have been talking a lot about Ephesians 3. And in Ephesians 3, Paul says, I pray that you are rooted in love. And I think that is so important as we look at what the church is going to look like to all of the rest of the world, all in our communities.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there that have been hurt by the church. And we talked about that today.
Yep.
And excuse me.
It's okay.
So we talked about how people have been hurt in the church. And unfortunately, people that have been hurt, they continue to go out and hurt people. Unfortunately, when people are afraid, they go teach other people how to be afraid. When people are angry, they teach people how to go out and be angry.
Yeah.
And so if we're rooted in love, if we actually have gone through the healing, those that have been healed can go out and heal others. Those that have love can go out and teach others how to love.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. But they talked about this root structure of all the redwoods. You go out to California, if you've had a chance, some of the redwoods are over 350 feet tall. They're 20 feet wide or more at the base. And these are massive, massive trees. But you think about, they can live 2,000 years and they withstand floods and droughts and fires and earthquakes and everything else that this world has to throw at them. But what keeps them together is the fact that their root structure is intertwined. And that root structure, they all hold one another up. In fact, I love the speaker today talked about the fact that not only do they hold each other up, if one tree starts to lean or fall over, the rest of the roots will all come in there and give extra support. And if a tree is not getting the nourishment it needs, those other trees will give up their nourishment to nourish that tree so that it will continue to live and thrive.
Yeah.
And, that's such a beautiful picture for the church, but I think not just as the church. We need to make sure that we help everybody thrive in our congregation. But also, how do we help those thrive in our community? And how do we help those thrive in the rest of the world?
Yep.
That is a completely different picture than what society tells us we should be doing. Again, going back to what I talked about, how am I going to win? How am I going to be number one?
Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's good. I think that it's, when you hear something multiple times in multiple places that are seemingly random. I mean, maybe random's not the right word. It's not like these people didn't know ahead of time they were going to write messages. But like, I haven't just heard this idea of connected or caring for one another or supporting each other or, network or whatever. It's not just been this week. That's what we talk about at Katy First all the time, about how we want to be welcoming in such a way that it moves out into the community. It's not just on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And how we really care about making sure that we can be active in loving people, that we want to be so filled with that it goes out and carry it into the world. I think that, it has been tough as a conference. It's been tough as a denomination. And yet what I see is like we have this very clear now sense of understanding of who we really are and what we really are called to.
Yeah.
And the heart of that is grace and love. And saying, okay, so if that's the case, then we're not going to do, this is not business as usual. We're going to go do something different. And we've been hearing that at annual conference, but that's already the conversations we've been having at Katy First.
Yeah.
Is we don't want to just do what we've always done. We want to say, this is who we are, and so we're going to go do X, Y, Z and respond to God's call because of that. Yeah. So it's nice that like the conference is listening to us, I guess.
They've been listening to the podcast.
Or maybe we're all just listening to the prompting of the Holy Spirit.
I think that's
maybe it's that one.
The one. That's the one.
Yes, that's what I said, Bishop.
Yeah.
Well, can I bring up one other thing? Because I think this is interesting. Again, I've been here for 7 years, so relatively a short period of time compared to a lot of others that have been here. But one of the things when you asked me to come last year, I did hear from several people, I could never go to annual conference, or that, how chaotic it had been in the past. What I can say last year, we didn't have that sense. It was not that chaotic. But this year it was really interesting. When we went into the laity vote to vote for our delegates. So what's interesting is when the lay delegates get together and vote is we have to elect delegates that are going to go to general conference. And the way we do that is in order for somebody to be elected is they have to get over 50% of the vote. And so we're voting for 10 people at once out of this long list of all of these people that have applied to be a delegate. And what was so cool is on the very first vote, 9 delegates made it in. And then we had 2 more votes, and we got the 10th person. And it just went so quick and so easy. I even remember last year, we sat in there, and it just seemed like it took forever to get a consensus on what the people. But what that does tell me is you have more unity. You have more people that are like-minded, that are aligned to a mission to where they want the church to go. And that is so refreshing to feel that. And I hear from everybody else that's been coming here a lot longer than me that the mood and the atmosphere is so much more energizing rather than draining like maybe it had been in the past.
Yeah. Yep.
It hasn't always been tough, but there definitely, especially in the last few, it got rough. It got rough. And it got rough to be a part of the connection. And the reason people keep talking about roots and this intertwinedness is that's what we call it, the connection, the way that we are all connected to one another as United Methodists. And it works when we all share in the connection. Yeah. And there was like struggle in that. And I really do feel like we're being renewed. I'm not trying to be cheesy. I'm sorry. But I do feel like we're being renewed. And we do have, we are turning our face to like what God is, like the direction that God is really calling us as a church, as a conference.
Sorry. I felt like we were on a cough wave there. Just need to finish it.
I was waiting. Okay, great, guys. But But I do feel like we're paying attention to what God is calling us to, where God is calling us as a church, as a conference, and as a international denomination.
Yeah.
And because there was consensus at General Conference too. It's a theme now. We are actually United Methodist, and this is the direction we're going towards more grace and more love and more inclusion. I love it. I'm so here for it.
Yeah.
Literally, because we're here for it. I told you I'd be funny. I didn't tell you when.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I think for like the average person who, you maybe come to Katy first, and we're United Methodist, and maybe that means something to you, or maybe you don't, care. You just love the church. I think to get this sort of bigger sense of our United Methodism and how we are connected, and how that spirit that I really do think a lot of us feel at our church isn't just locally at Katy First. It is all across our Texas Annual Conference, and to a degree, all across of our United Methodist. Well, to a big degree, all across our United Methodist Church. It's really neat to like have that. I mean, I think as United Methodist, we are United Methodist at a very exciting and in many ways historical moment. I think it's a pretty powerful moment to have that sense. And so I know for many of us, it's just hard to get that larger sense. We're getting it right now to a degree, and so I hope, if you're listening, you're kind of getting some of that larger sense of like the spirit that is in the air on a bigger level. There was a quote that Michael Jarboe shared that he got it from another pastor, so it's kind of 2 degrees separation here, and I'm going to butcher it too, but y'all can help me because I know you. But he said, I want to create a church where we can be the church, not just a church where we come to church, or something along that lines. Y'all don't remember how he said that, and I wrote it down, so it's on my phone, but we'll articulate. But like that sense of like, one, we're not just trying to get people to come to us. We want to be a people who are communal. We want people who live what we do. We want people who are incarnationally in spaces, being the hands and feet of Christ. And that's the kind of like larger denomination I want to be a part of. I know many of us are kind of allergic to institutional things, and to be quite honest, this is kind of institution I want to belong to because it has that spirit of freshness and energy and excitement and love and humility and care for those outside of us. And I hope for someone who belongs to Katy First, you are getting some of that bigger vision of what we belong to, and that's really cool to be a part of that kind of institutional church in the best way.
And I feel like we talked earlier about coming back to the basics, like, and I feel like we're doing that a lot, going back to like what the Wesleyan way, like what they started as circuit riders. They started small. They started by bringing the church to the people, and I feel like we're starting to get to that point now.
Yeah.
We're going back to the basics and starting over.
Yeah, people want to be part of a church that they can be, versus a church that they go to.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so it was very, it's just a different way of thinking. I loved the thought of, traditionally church as believe, belong, behave. Well, let's get rid of the 2 bookends there, and let's just have it be a place where everybody can belong. Yeah. The other things may or may not come, but everybody needs to be able to feel like they belong.
Right.
And that's the mission of the church is, give me all of your outcasts of society, and let's go out there and we're going to make a big difference.
It's just an incarnational, I think, is the way that they talked about it and the way we've talked about it. I mean, that was even the whole drive of like Advent forever ago. But was this idea of embodied incarnational with, right? Belonging. And that's how we are the church, is that we are with. And because Christ is with us.
Yeah. This has been fun. Let's do it next week. We'll come back here and we'll just hang out. Yeah.
We'll text a couple friends.
Yeah.
Hey. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you have found some inspiration and encouragement, and maybe found out some new things about the United Methodist Church. if you'd like to get our weekly podcast delivered directly to you each week, you can subscribe or follow us on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. For more information about Katy First and upcoming events for you or your family, you can visit our website at katyfirst.org. We want you to know that in the middle of your ordinary, messy life, whatever that looks like for you today, that you are not alone, that you are loved, and you are doing a good job.
And of course, we'd love to see you on a Sunday. We're starting a brand new series. I'm going to watch y'all's face because I may have told you. We're talking 4 weeks on money.
Oh, fun.
Marilee can't wait.
Everyone's response. I'm actually really excited about it. And this week we're talking about the widow's mite. We're calling it the widow's plight. And this is
dad joke.
I know, it's great.
I'm so proud of you.
But this series will kind of money matters, and this is the week that matters of justice. So looking at that. So I actually am really excited about it, and it's gonna be good.
Okay, but I have another announcement. Don't try to just hang up on us. Because this Sunday, yes, come to worship and learn more about the widow's plight. But also, after worship, stick around because we are having a baby shower.
Oh, yeah.
For Mark and Hannah and Miley's little sibling. And
brother
so,
or sister,
yeah.
or sister or brother.
Well, we're excited. So come stay after church on Sunday and join us in that celebration. You don't have to bring anything except like maybe a gift for the baby. And then you can come and just eat a meal. It'll be great.
Okay. Everybody have a good week.